Hey y'all, so in doing these insurance videos, I've gotten several people ask me like how I even got into insurance. So let me go on ahead and tell y'all a little story.
You in the past, I'm in the future. You mad?
Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, my name is Kela Trishaan and I make videos on lifestyle, womanhood, mental health. I do a lot of vlogs, day in the life with a toddler, day in the life in the insurance industry, all the things. So if that interests you, definitely go on ahead and click that subscribe button below. Be sure to turn on your notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you are returning, thank you so much for coming back and thank you for your support. Okay, so as I prefaced, I've gotten people ask me, not even just on YouTube, but like in my personal life, like, how did you get into insurance? Most people, at least in my experience, don't just wake up and say, oh, I want to be an insurance adjuster, or oh, I want to work for an insurance company. For a lot of people, including my colleagues, it's something that we just kind of fell into. So what I'm gonna do is I will just kind of walk you through my work history. I'm gonna start far back, but I'm gonna try to make it as quick as possible, and then I will get you to where I am at now. So if you are interested in that story, go on ahead and stay tuned. Okay, so it is a running joke in my family that I have been working since I was 2. Not just me, but my siblings. Like, all of us started working at an early age. So my first job was actually at a retail clothing store that was managed by my aunt's aunt. So it was something where like I just needed to bring in some money. My mom had 5 children, and I, like being the oldest in the house at the time, I just felt like it would be helpful if I could just make my own money. So I didn't have to count on her to buy school clothes and stuff like that. I would just have my own money and she could just worry about the other 4. So 14 years old, I started working at this clothing store and I was making minimum wage. Probably gonna tell my age with this, which I mean, most of you guys know how old I am anyway, but minimum wage was $5.75 at the time. So yeah, that was a long time ago. Now, obviously things were a lot cheaper back then and money went a little bit further. So it was enough money for me to buy my school clothes, buy lunch, stuff like that. I typically worked like 1 or 2 days a week, and it was like on the weekend, unless I was on vacation from school, like summer vacation, spring break, whatever. And then I might work like during the week to bring in some extra cash. But yeah, that was like my first job. And I did that for about a year or so. And then I think it was 10th grade, actually. 10th grade, I did not have a job and like had some family things going on or whatever. So I stopped working that job, and then I was broke again. So when I was in 11th grade, I remember I came back to school and a lot of my friends were working at a famous bank at the time. Or they were doing this telemarketing thing. And I just remember being upset, like, why didn't anybody tell me that they were working at these places? Like, what's going on? So I had a homeboy at the time and he was working at the bank. And I just remember like bugging him basically every single freaking day that whole year. Like,
when is your manager hiring more interns?
It was like a high school internship program. So I was like,
when is he hiring more interns? Like, I need the job, you know I'm gonna be good.
And he's like, I will let you know when they are hiring. And so literally, when I tell you I bugged him like every day we had class together, I would ask him all the time, like, so what's up, what's up, what's up? And finally, like towards the end of the year, it was probably like maybe a month or so before we went on summer break after 11th grade, that I got called in for an interview at this bank and I ended up getting hired. So that was like my first real job, steady job. The first job was, it's like it wasn't a real job, but I was doing it like very seldom. But the bank job was the first job where I actually had to have some structure. I had to get there on time and all that stuff. So that started like a whole thing. Oh, the good old bank. So this became the start of like what seemed like it was going to be like an actual career path for me. Like, I was considering like staying in the bank forever because like the hours were cool, my coworkers were cool, like it was a revolving door, don't get me wrong. But so I met a lot of people, a lot of people. And the bank that I was working at, I was like the only African-American girl a lot of times. Like there were other African-American girls that were hired, of course. But again, since it was a revolving door, I was like the standing face at this particular bank for a long time because I worked there throughout high school. And then after I graduated from high school, they offered me a permanent position, which made me like just a regular teller. So with that, I did get a little bit of a pay bump. I can't remember exactly what that pay bump was. I just remember specifically starting at $8 an hour. So anywho, so I did that job and it was perfect. Like they worked with my hours for college. I was basically, when I went to college, I bumped my hours up, but I was still working like kind of part-time. So I would do like between 20 to 30 hours a week, and then I was going to school full-time. So the bank wasn't too far from my school, so it was really easy for me to go to class in the morning and then come work in the afternoon, or vice versa, depending on what I had going on for the semester. And my managers were always pretty cool as far as letting me change my schedule each semester if I needed to. So it was honestly a really good thing, and I was making decent money for the time. Like that and my financial aid, I was doing like A-okay in college, even though like I've said plenty of times, my family didn't come from a lot of money. Like we didn't really have a lot, but I was okay. And I was able to contribute to some of the household things with the money that I was making at work, and then also with financial aid. So that was like kind of my thing. So I have a degree in marketing. So when I graduated from college, I was still loving the bank, but the bank that I was working at was actually going through some turmoil. So we didn't know if we were going to get laid off or what was going on, because they were going through like a merger. So it was kind of scary. And I was literally like fresh off of graduating. Like I had probably graduated that May, and all this stuff was going on with the bank in like September. And the issue was I was newly like graduated, and I had this degree in marketing. This was also at the top of a recession. So a lot of the jobs that I wanted to start, like, or that I wanted to go out for, there was so much competition, and a lot of people that I graduated with didn't even have jobs lined up. So here we are, you know, with these degrees, and there's no one to hire us, or if we do get a job, we're having to start at a super low, you know, amount to even get our foot in the door. So this is just kind of like, this is what happened with millennials. Like a lot of us graduated around the time of the recession, and things were bad for some time. So for me, I figured it was smarter for me to just go on ahead and stay in banking, since I already kind of made a name for myself. I figured I would just try to go up through the ranks. I tried to get supervisor and all that stuff, since I now was graduated. But the problem was that this particular company was not stable anymore. So I started looking elsewhere. Looked elsewhere, and I found a supervisor position at, they're a bigger bank now, but they were kind of small back then. They were acquiring other banks, but I ended up leaving this major bank to go to another like kind of up and coming bank. So at that bank, I was a supervisor, and y'all, that got crazy. So I leave this other company that I had been with since high school, and it was kind of emotional because I like literally made a lot of friends, knew a lot of people. That bank ended up not completely going under. They just got bought by somebody, and you know, my coworkers were okay. But I was able to get a supervisor position right away somewhere else with like paying basically a little more money. So I was like, let me go on ahead and take this. So that I would consider like my first like, well, don't get me wrong, the other bank was a real job, but I kind of just treated it as like a part-time type thing because I was in college. So my first real job after college was a supervisor at a bank. So the issue with that particular bank is that when I started, I had this manager, and she was super nice, but she ended up getting terminated like maybe a month or so after I started. And we didn't have an assistant manager. So I was, if you know how banking structure works, there's usually a branch manager, there is an assistant manager, and then there is like the teller supervisor, which was me. There was no one above me. I was still learning the system, barely knew what I was doing. I was very young, and I struggled a lot. Not because I didn't know the job. I struggled because there was no one like immediately in the branch to help me out. So they did send different like managers and supervisors from other locations to like help me, but it still wasn't enough to get me going like in the time I needed to be to run this branch. So struggled with that for like a few months, but I ended up doing okay. And I ended up, you know, kind of like finding my footing, finding my ground. And they eventually did bring in a new manager. And then also one of the guys that was there before me, he got promoted to assistant manager. So we did have like a good system going. So that was about a year. Now I probably would have stayed there, and I probably would have tried to move up, but I had an issue being a supervisor. You are responsible for other people. And that was something that I was learning. I was very new to, and I was so friendly that I wasn't really like enforcing my supervisor duties. So a lot of things I ended up doing on my own when I was supposed to be delegating tasks. So with that being said, we had an audit, and we didn't pass that audit, which in banking is really bad. So Because of this, it wasn't all on me. Like, it was on the manager, it was on the assistant manager. Like, it was just so many different like moving pieces going on. So our branch was kind of like under, not investigation, but we were under like a microscope, because when you fail an audit, like, they're pretty much on you, because you get another audit within like 90 days, and they are trying to make sure that, you know, whatever is going on in the branch is fixed, or else they shut that branch down. So this caused a lot of stress. So it made me have to like really start enforcing things with my current employees. Now the issue was, these employees, I was young and they were young. So there were things that I was telling them to do that weren't getting done, and you know, I'm ending up having to do it myself, and just all kind of stuff. So long story short, what ended up happening in that case is the two employees that I had that I really genuinely liked, they ended up terminating them. So it ended up just being me and one other teller. So we were swamped every day. We were working like pretty crazy hours, and they were kind of honest about overtime, but it was only the two of us. So that got to be very like, it was just too much. So I started applying elsewhere. I was like, yeah, this is not going to work. Like, it just started off bad, you know? So I ended up getting recruited into a rental car company. Oh, good old rental. So it's a famous rental car company that I was working for, and they had like a trainee type program. So I did the trainee program, and the funny part was that I ended up kind of having to take a pay cut to do this. So it was like an hourly pay cut, but I made up the money through like my sales and the hours, because you were working a lot of hours. So I actually made more than what I did at the bank, even though my hourly was lower. So I did the management trainee type program for a little bit, and then I ended up getting promoted to an assistant manager position, and then eventually I went into car sales. So having done the management position again at this rental company, if I'm gonna be honest, it kind of turned me off from doing management. And the reason why I say that is because when you are like in management at that level, like, you're responsible for so many different bodies. And although I feel like I had the skill to do it, it got frustrating, because if people didn't do what they were supposed to do, it fell on you. And I honestly just don't like that. Like, some people thrive in that type of role, but for me, it was more stress than what it was worth. Like, I'm getting talked to because this employee didn't do enough sales, or this employee did this or that, you know? And for me, it's like, I'm doing my job to the best of my ability. I'm working my behind off, and you know, and I'm working all these hours. Like, I don't have time for it. So when I was approached by the car sales department to go over there and be an individual contributor, that actually was very attractive to me. So I went on ahead and went over to that department, and then I was selling cars. Crazy enough, knew nothing about, like, I knew enough about cars to get by, but I didn't really know enough to sell them. They teach you, but it was a lot of on-the-job training. So I did that for like a couple of years. And the reason why I ended up just kind of, you know, looking elsewhere outside of that is because although I was cool with the individual contributor thing, I wasn't really feeling sales anymore. Like, I didn't like the fact that, you know, my paycheck, like, no matter how hard I worked, if this was a slow season, my check might not be that big. If this was, you know, a good season, I might get like a huge check, whatever. I didn't like the uncertainty of that department, honestly. And then there were several other things. Now, I've done some videos, like probably a year ago at this point. I'm gonna try to find them and link them, but I'll tell you about what happened with the pay plan in this particular department, which also pushed me out. So yeah, so I did that, and you know, it was time for something else. I was, you know, getting close to 30, didn't know when I was gonna start a family, and it just wasn't sustainable for me to do that amount of hours and then not even be guaranteed like a big ass check, you know? So part of my job as a car sales rep was to go and like market to different rental car branches for people that had like a total loss, they were looking for another car. But then also there was an insurance company that I dealt with on a regular basis, and kind of got to know some of those employees, and like credit unions and stuff like that. And so the insurance like industry kind of intrigued me at that point, because I knew that the hours were like relatively simple, like 8 to 5, 9 to 6, Monday through Friday. Like, I was just at a point in my life where I needed to pivot. I had been working weekends and all this stuff, and you know, going into my 30s, or you know, approaching 30s, I was like, let me find something where I don't have to work weekends. Like, I need to like restructure how I want my life to look. And so that was how insurance even got on my mind. Now, the first job that I got after the car sales department was not in insurance. It was actually a very small tech recruiting firm. So it was a startup, and they had been in business at the time like 6 or 7 years. And it was just like, it was a small, very small company, like no real HR structure. Like the HR was basically the owner. And it was a lot of young people there. Not that I wasn't young, but I had been in the workforce for a bit. And I'm gonna be honest with you, there were only like 2 or 3 people there that I actually liked. Everybody else had like snotty ass attitudes. They would make mountains out of molehills. Like just the things that they would complain about, I couldn't relate to because I'm just like, oh, y'all don't have no work experience. And then I felt like I was gonna end up coming to like blowing a gasket with one of the employees, whatever. Like there was this one girl in particular, just stank ass attitude. And, I don't really do well with that kind of stuff. Like I'm extremely nice and I really try to get along with people. I really try to be personable and I try to be respectful because that's how I expect to be treated. So when I don't get that in return, and like if I'm being disrespected or I feel like I'm being disrespected, then I have a tendency to lash out. And also I was a lot younger, so I was a lot more hot-headed back then. Not like hot-headed as in like getting myself in trouble and stuff, but like I was a lot quicker to snap on your ass, So I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. Now, prior to this, one of the insurance companies that I had applied to did not hire me. Which was fine, like I'm a big believer in it just wasn't for me at the time, whatever. But my sister ended up applying for the same insurance company. She got in and she was the one that actually told me that I should apply because they're hiring. So I ended up applying and what do you know? They hit me back and sent me a little assessment test or whatever. And I took the assessment test and they ended up inviting me for an interview. So I had to figure out a way to get out of work that day. Because it was like a salary position, but we got commission, with the with hires and stuff like that because it was recruiting. So I had to figure out a way to get out of work that day to get to this interview. Like I was just kind of scared to do that or whatever, but I was like, F it, like I need to figure it out. So I told them something, got out of work and went and interviewed. And it ended up being the best decision I ever made because it was my first job in insurance. And I didn't know that, I didn't really know if I could start entry level. So I just kind of figured I would play off of the skills that I already had. But what they really wanted was somebody with like customer service and problem solving skills, which I had from all of my previous jobs. So I got my first adjuster position in 2015. And yeah, I'm gonna be honest, like that was a job that I really, 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 really enjoyed. So when you first get into insurance, it's tough because you're literally learning everything. You're learning how to read the policies. You're learning what all this policy language means. Obviously, I had my own insurance policies, but I was never actually combing through stuff. And I couldn't just tell you exactly what things meant or where to find certain information. So they teach you all of this stuff. They teach you like what insurance companies look for when they're doing claims, when they're investigating. Like it's a lot of learning. It's also a lot of like legal stuff. So there's a lot of like trainings that you have to go through that are talking about fraud, talking about just like rules and regulations. Like there's so many different things. So like literally the first like month and a half was just all training. So I didn't even get to start taking claims until like close to 2 months in, which was fine. They typically, and this is with any insurance company, they usually will start you off with like a few claims so you can kind of get your feet wet and handle the claim from start to finish. And then once they see that you are, good, then they start gradually raising you until you are at 100% with the other employees. And then once you get to 100%, it's pretty much just up to you to manage your desktop because it's minimal. Even if you're in an office, like your manager is not coming to you like, okay, we're working on this day, we're working on this day, we're working on this day. You set your desktop up the way you want your desktop to look. You have your system in place and pretty much you create your routines that make you successful. So you're gonna get metrics for what needs to be done. Like for example, we need to have this done within 30 days or whatever. So you figure out how you're gonna get that done within 30 days. You got to keep your customers informed of what's going on throughout the process, that kind of stuff. So for me, it actually ended up being pretty easy. I did have some colleagues that struggled with that, but for me, it ended up being pretty easy because it was literally what I wanted. It was a desk job. I didn't have to be driving around all day like I was in the car sales position. I literally just got my work. I just had to get it done. So that was like what appealed to me. So I did that particular position for about 2.5 years. And at that point, it's like, okay, where do I go from here? Do I try to go to management? Like, do I try to go, to another department? What do I do? And remember I told you with management for me, I guess it depends. Like, I'm not saying that I'm closed off to management, but I prefer individual contributor positions so I can just worry about what I got going on and not what this person got going on. I don't like having to answer for things that people don't do. So the conversation that I have with my manager is just like, you can stay here for as long as you want. You can move up here if you want, but you have a better chance of getting the position that you want and the pay that you want if you have another discipline. So that led me to the homeowners department at this same insurance company. So that was a saga. So I interviewed for the homeowners department. This was a field position, and the tough part about this position is that I had no background in like homeowners anything. So I had to have a lot of technical experience, but it was a lot of things that I just pretty much learned on the job, and that made it so stressful, like the first year. So anybody will tell you, if you do like a field adjuster type position, it takes you about a year to a year and a half to be comfortable in the role. And that's assuming that you have some type of background. For some people, like if you have a construction background or something like that, then it might not be as hard for you. But for me, I had no construction background. I had no clue about like homeowner policy. So I had to learn about that. It's like 4 or 5 different policies. I had to learn how to use the software, learn how to, explain different things to people, learn how to talk to contractors and vendors. Like it was a lot. Now, here's the thing. Once I got acclimated with everything, the job became not necessarily hard. It was just trying to, make sure that you got all of your work done on time. My issue though was the manager that I had. The manager that I had was a fumbling bitch. Like she was, now that I look back, I feel like she was just very narcissistic. She would tell us things and then turn around and reprimand us for doing the things that she told us to do. She would be behind on work and then get mad at us for being behind on work. Like it was a toxic situation. And let's just say fast forward, a lot of the people on that team ended up leaving because she just made the job almost impossible. It was like we would wait till she went on vacation so we would have an acting manager to do different things. Like I literally got to a point where I'm like, okay, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I am a terrible adjuster. And it wasn't that. Like I would have other managers when she was out approve my stuff right away. Like tell me I'm doing a good job. But her, like, it was like I could do the best job ever and she would always figure out a way to tell me what I did wrong. Like it was just terrible. And then the way she would talk to us, like she talked to us like she had lost her mind. This was like one of those positions where I like really contemplated like fighting my manager. She was like the manager from hell. I don't have any way else to describe it. So that was that job. And the pandemic came, whatever. The pandemic started and, we were in a situation where we couldn't go out and go and inspect people's homes. It just wasn't safe anymore. So I had a small baby and just wasn't really sure kind of what that looked like. And I wasn't in a position to talk to my manager about the struggles I was having because he was put out of daycare. Like it was just a lot going on. So I ended up leaving that role for another role, which is the role that I have now, for an insurance company where I could strictly work from home. I didn't have to worry about going into anyone's home or anything like that, but I could work for like this company from my house and I would be able to watch my son and, just make sure that he was good to go and make sure that I was still able to bring money home. So that was kind of like that situation. But I got some good news and I will go more into detail in another video. But I got a new job. So I'll talk about that later. But this job that I currently have, I'm actually coming to an end with it and I'll be starting a new role at the end of the month. I'm gonna take you guys on that journey too because it is another field adjuster role. So now that my son's a little bit bigger, he's still not going into daycare right away because I will be training for, I think it's like 3 months. I'll be training and I have so many family members that live close by that like when I have to go out and inspect, I'll be just pretty much taking him there until he's like in school, which is like right around the corner. But yeah, I'm gonna probably do a separate video talking about that. But basically, yeah, I've got another job. So that is how I got into the insurance industry. And yeah, it's done me good. So what I can say about working in the insurance industry is it is stressful sometimes. Like it's not always just like an easy position. Like what I can say after doing it for like 7 years, the job becomes easier, like you know what you're doing, but the workload can be crazy, and there are seasons, like sometimes around the holidays it can be a little crazy, especially because, you know, in insurance you typically have like for example, Thanksgiving and Black Friday, you have those off, and there are people that want to talk to you on those days. So you have to explain to people, hey, I'm not here. So a lot of times those weeks where it would seem like you're just so happy to have like just a short week, sometimes it can be stressful because you're trying to fit like 5 days worth of work into 3 days. You're having to explain to people that their check is going to be delayed because there's a holiday. So there's a lot with that. And I think that it really is just kind of an industry where you have to have a certain type of temperament, and you have to be able to set boundaries in order to succeed, and you just have to kind of go with the flow. What I also can say is that once you are seasoned and once you know what you're doing, you can ask for a good amount of money because they know that it's difficult. Also right now with just things kind of changing after the pan, there are a lot of work from home positions. There are a lot of, you know, flexible work schedules. So if you are interested in something like that, if you do have small kids or just kids that are in school that need to be picked up, consider looking into insurance roles, because there are a lot of roles right now, especially that are available, where you will be able to have kind of the schedule that you need so you can have that flexibility to be able to tend to your family and get your work done. So yeah, I know that was kind of long-winded. Y'all know me, like when I tell a story, I tell y'all all of it. So I just want to kind of give you guys a thorough background on like my work history. The questions that I get sometimes is like, what type of training did you do? What type of, you know, experience did you have before? Literally, I had banking and I had automotive experience before I got into insurance. So you can start entry level, and once you like, you know, get to a point where you know what you're doing, you can, you know, move up. There are other departments. I did a video on just like different departments in the insurance industry, so I will link that too, just so you can kind of go and look at that video and you can kind of decide like where you want to go. A lot of times you have to start like in the claims department, which is probably the most stressful department, but you have to start there to understand how claims even work. And then once you have like a year and a half or so experience, depending on the company, you can kind of move around to different departments and do something that fits you. It's a industry where, you know, you have a lot of people that retire doing it, and you can honestly make a very good living. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions just about my experience or just anything pertaining to the insurance industry, be sure to leave me a comment below. And yeah, I will answer everything to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you so much for the support. And if you have not subscribed, definitely go on ahead and click that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss anything from me. That being said, you guys have an amazing day, and I will see you next time.
You mad that they don't salute you. I need a bag, size is super. They turned your bag, it's like I never knew you. Leave that.